Hi everyone, it's Julia from Crosspatch. We've been making Hexie boxes. Went on a retreat last week, was it? And I got everyone making Hexie boxes, and everyone has asked me, although I have done a video before on it on YouTube, they've all asked me, can I do another one? So I'm going to do another one. Plus I've sort of updated how I make them anyway. We've now got the addition of having boxes with Hexie flower lids on them. These were so if I move them out the way, these were the original ones here. So those one I just appliqued some little teeny tiny Hexie flowers on the top of. Here was a Christmas one that I did originally. And you open it up and you can see the fabric on the inside. And here are the Hexie flower ones that I've done with Hexie flower lids. So he's got bubble wrap inside him just to stop him getting squashed when I took him in the car to the retreat. So that's a Hexie flower one, and here's another Hexie flower one with some, again, really pretty. This is new Macawa fabric, or Andover fabrics if you're in the US. That I've made, and the busy bee one. So there's busy bees on the outside, honeycomb on the bottom, and beehives on the inside. And then there's another Christmassy one. This was last year's one that I did. Okay, so what you need if you're making Hexie boxes is fusible foam like this, Bosal or Legacy or whatever you can get. Fusible one side I use. In your instructions you will now get the template for doing the Hexie flower lid. So that will be a template. You'll need a Bosal of the hexagon and one of the lid. So that will be the Hexie flower template you get in your instructions. And you will also get, those are the rest of your instructions, you'll also get hexagons in all the sizes. If you really want to go teeny tiny and do a 2-inch one, I think that would make some bad words from me if I did a 2-inch one. I think 2.5 inches is the smallest I've managed to do, which would look like that. So that's a 2.5-inch one. Okay, so if you're doing the normal boxes, so boxes with normal, just a fussy cut fabric on the lid, okay, you are going to cut 2 pieces of the Bosal the size of your box. So this is a 3.5-inch box, so I've cut 2 pieces of Bosal, one for the lid and one for the base. Okay, and then I've cut my fabric. I found if you use a 1/2-inch seam, so cut your fabric a 1/2 inch bigger. So you'll do this for the bottom and the top. So I've got 2 pieces of fabric right size together there, and if you're fussy cutting your fabric, make sure that when you put your tab in, it's on the right side. So I'll show you that in a minute. So that is going to be my lid, and you're going to leave, obviously you're going to leave a gap for turning, but make sure that gap, if you're fussy cutting your fabric, so say if that was going to be my lid, I would have had to leave a gap in that top edge there. This is going to be the base of this box, but if that was the lid, I would have to leave the gap there. Now, when I was making the bits for showing the demo, I managed to leave the gap in the wrong side of the lid, so that when I open my lid, my house is facing the wrong way, as you can see, facing the wrong way. So make sure you leave your gap in the right side of your hexagon. So here's one I did wrong earlier. Anyway, so you've fused your fabric on one side. You've got 2 pieces of fabric for your base, 2 pieces of fabric for your lid, and then you're going to sew them all around, leaving a gap in one side, and then you can turn them right sides out. So you can just push it through, and the Bosal will push through quite nicely. You probably have to iron it again afterwards. So you just push it through like so. And this one I have actually left the gap in the right side. So use a pokey tool to get all your seams poked out nicely and give it a good press. So when that's turned out right sides out, okay, obviously that's needs some of the pokey tool in it, and then fold your seams over neatly on the top and the base. So that will fold. If you've got a 1/2 inch seam, you can see it's easier to fold them over, and then your flap is going to go in there. So there's the flap. You're going to put your flap in there, and then you're going to top stitch all around the edge of your box, and that will hold the flap in place. Okay, do the same with the bottom. Obviously you don't need a flap in the base, so that's going to be my base and that's going to be my lid. Okay, so I've done my top and my base, and I've top stitched all around them. Okay, so next I want to make what will be the outside of my box. Okay, so if this is a 3.5 inch box, so this is like this one, you're going to want your bosal, it's got to be 3.5 inches as well, and it's got to be cut exactly to 3.5 inches to fit on to your base. If you cut it too big or too small, you'll find it won't fit. Okay, so you're going to cut your bosal 3.5 inches by 2 inches, or if you want it deeper, you can do it 2.5 inches. That one's deeper, that's a 2.5 inch side. So you will cut 6, because it's a hexagon, 6 pieces of bosal, and then again you want to cut your 2 pieces of fabric to go with each piece of bosal, and fuse the bosal to what will be the outside fabric. Again, a bit more than 1/4 inch seams are better because it's easier to turn them round. Leave a gap in the bottom edge, so stitch, that's what I forgot to say, when you're stitching, just stitch as close as you can to the bosal. So if you just nip the edges of the bosal, it doesn't matter. Okay, so stitch as close as you can. Leave the gap in what will be your bottom edge, because you're going to sew that to the base, and then you won't really notice any slip stitching or anything where you've stitched it together. And then you'll turn all of those 6 right sides out. So when you've turned them right sides out, they will look like that. Okay, give them a good press down, and then I top stitch them again. It just makes it easier to sew the whole thing together at the end. So I top stitch them again about 1/8 inch all the way around before I sew them together. Now when you sew them together, you can sew them by hand, and in which case you will just slip stitch along the edges, or you can sew them on machine. Depends what kind of look you want. So this one, you can see I stitched the whole of this box by machine. So it's up to you. And I even stitched it to the bottom by machine. This one's stitched together by hand, and this will then go on top of the base. So there's the base, and there's my sides. So you'll place those on there. I would do a couple of tack stitches halfway along each seam. Make sure it's all going to fit together. Do a big tack stitch sort of halfway along there on each side, and then go back and slip stitch again if you want to slip stitch it, or you can do it on your machine. When you're sewing it by machine, try and get this as close as I can to the camera, you tend to have to start away from the edge of where your seams are on the sides. So you have to start about 1/2 inch in, and then reverse your machine and then go along. If you've got a really lightweight machine, don't even think about doing it, because it won't work. You need a half decent machine, not like a mega ultra expensive one, but not a really lightweight one that you just take to class or something. That won't do it. It will do the individual bits, but if you're trying to sew 2 bits together and through all the fabric, it will struggle. Okay, so once you've sewn your sides on, you can attach your box lid to the back of your box. Again, I did mine on machine, so you can do that now, or you can put some lace around. Let's take that out. you can put some lace around first. Again, I did that on my machine. I stitched the lace around first, and then I stitched the box lid on. On the front, that's just a self-cover button and just a bit of ribbon to shut the box. Now, if you're doing a Hexie flower lid, so if we're doing a Hexie flower lid, the difference is you've not got a gap to put your tab onto. Okay, so here's a Hexie flower lid in preparation. You've got your template in your pattern, and you're just going to draw around the flower template and cut on the line that you've drawn. You're going to draw around the bosal for your hexagon, but in this case, on the lid, your fabric is going to be the same size as the bosal, okay? Because then you're going to put that in the middle of your flower, and you're going to fold your flower over like so. You can use some fabric glue to hold them in place or pin them, and then when you've sewn them, use a buttonhole stitch to sew them down. So just buttonhole stitch around. You can do that by hand or machine. And talking about that, I'll just show you while we're at it. I just got some new threads in. So I used, Valdani have started doing this beautiful variegated machine thread, of which I've got 3 colours, my 3 favourite colours that they do. But I've used this one, the S303, I believe that one is, which goes with all these wild orchid fabrics and with all the wildflower fabrics. It goes really well. So I use that to stitch my box together. I've used that on the whole box. That's a by the by. So that will make your lid. That's going to be your lid on your box, and you're just going to put underneath, your tab is going to have to go underneath the lid. And the way I attach that is, once I've done the Hexie flower, I top stitch it all round and then incorporate the flap on the inside. So if you've got my big boy Hexie flower templates, which are these ones, those are what I use to cut mine out. Makes it a lot easier. Obviously in your pattern you've got all the templates there, so make whatever size box you want. So if you're doing a 3.5 inch box, you've got 3.5 inch sides. So if I say it's a 3.5 inch box, it's 3.5 inches is the size of the hexagon, okay? It depends on how deep you want the box. You can make it deeper than that if you want. That's a 2.5 inch side on that one, and that's a 2 inch side on that one. And they're just nice to put for Christmas presents, just to put some sweets in it or something. So it's a good gift idea. As I told them on the retreat, I can do one in an hour, but I think it took most of them, when they did their first one, a few hours to do it. But I think once you've done one and you get used to doing them, you can do them pretty quickly. So, and the biggest piece of fabric you're going to need if you're making this box is a 10 inch square if you're doing the Hexie flower one. So I do little bundles of 10 inch squares, so they're ideal for making these boxes. So hopefully that's made it clearer than mud, to help you along. So thanks for watching again, and I'll be back soon with some more of my random demos. Thank you, bye.